I walked through my front door, after a 12-hour hospital shift on Christmas Day, and found my daughter Julie trembling in her bedroom. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She showed me her wrists, red and raw from where they had tied the sign. "Family disgrace," it read, because they said she was a liar. They left her hungry in the corner for hours while they ate Christmas dinner. My parents, my siblings, all of them. I felt my heart crack open with rage. 2 days later, my phone was blowing up with their hysterical calls. But by then, everything had already changed forever. Life as a single mom was never easy, but I thought I was doing okay. I worked hard as an ER nurse at Memorial Hospital to provide for Julie, my 7-year-old daughter with eyes like mine, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. It wasn't fancy, but we made it home with string lights around the windows and Julie's artwork covering our refrigerator. My relationship with my parents, Harold and Maureen Wilson, had always been complicated. They lived in a sprawling house in the suburbs, where I grew up with my 2 brothers, Aaron and Jeff, and my sister Paige. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family. But inside those walls, nothing was ever good enough. My parents had expectations that bordered on impossible, and their criticism was constant. When I became pregnant with Julie at 23, their disapproval was crushing. I wasn't married. The relationship with Julie's father had ended months before I discovered I was pregnant, and he wanted nothing to do with us. My parents made sure I understood what a disappointment I was, how I had ruined my life, how no decent man would want me now. But the moment I held Julie in my arms, none of that mattered. I promised her then that I would give her the unconditional love I never had. For the first few years, my parents kept their distance. They sent birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside but rarely visited. It was only when Julie started kindergarten that they suddenly took an interest. They started inviting us to Sunday dinners, offering to babysit, buying Julie expensive gifts. I was cautiously hopeful that they were finally accepting us, that Julie would have grandparents who loved her. I should have recognized the warning signs. "She really needs more discipline, Dulce," my mother would say. Her lips pursed as Julie played. "You let her get away with too much. Children need structure," my father would lecture. "You work too many hours at that hospital. How can you possibly be raising her properly?" My brothers and sister echoed these sentiments whenever we were together. Aaron and his wife Tiffany had 3 perfectly behaved children who excelled at sports and academics. Jeff and his wife Carol had 2 teenagers, Blake and Madison, who were polite and accomplished. Paige and her husband Tom were raising 4 boys with military precision. Their children were the gold standard, while Julie and I were somehow defective. I tried to brush off their criticism. Julie was a normal, happy child. Sure, she was spirited and imaginative, sometimes forgetful or disorganized, but she was just 7 years old. She was kind, made friends easily, and her teachers adored her creativity. What more could I ask for? As the months passed, my family's involvement in our lives increased, as did their criticism. They questioned everything from Julie's diet to her bedtime routine. My mother started sending articles about the importance of proper parenting and books about discipline. When I pushed back, they would sigh and exchange knowing glances, as if I was the one being unreasonable. The week before Christmas, the hospital asked if I could work a double shift on Christmas Day. The holiday pay would be enough to catch up on our rent and maybe even put a little aside in our savings. It was a difficult decision, but I said yes. Julie and I would have our own Christmas celebration on Christmas Eve, and then she would spend Christmas Day with my parents and the rest of the family while I worked. Julie had always loved the big family Christmas gatherings at my parents' house. The enormous tree, the mountains of presents, the elaborate meal. But this year, when I told her about the plan, she didn't seem excited. "Do I have to go, Mom?" she asked, twisting her fingers in her lap. "Don't you want to see everyone?" "There will be so many presents, and Grandma's famous chocolate pie." Julie shrugged. "I guess." I chalked it up to disappointment about not spending the day with me. To make it up to her, I planned an extra special Christmas Eve. We decorated cookies, watched holiday movies, and I let her open one present early. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she seemed happier, and I felt less guilty about having to work the next day. On Christmas morning, I woke her early so we could have breakfast together before my shift started. I braided her hair the way she liked it and helped her pick out her favorite red dress with white tights for the family gathering. My mother had arranged for Aaron to pick Julie up at 8:30, and I left for the hospital with a quick kiss and a promise to be back by 9 that night. The emergency room was chaotic that day, as it always is during the holidays. Between treating a heart attack, a car accident, and countless cases of food poisoning, I barely had time to text Julie to see how she was doing. When I didn't get a response, I assumed she was too busy having fun to check the phone I had left with her. It wasn't until I was changing in the locker room after my shift that I felt a strange sense of unease. Julie always texted back, even if it was just with a string of emojis. I tried calling, but there was no answer. When I called my parents' house, my mother answered with a clipped, "She's fine, Dulce. We'll have her ready when you get here." The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes. When I arrived, Julie was sitting silently in the front hall with her coat already on. My mother handed me a bag with Julie's things and said they were tired after the long day. No one else came to say goodbye. Julie didn't say a word as we walked to the car. It wasn't until we got home and were safely inside our apartment that Julie broke down. Her small body shook with sobs as she told me about her day. About how Blake couldn't find his new gaming system. About how everyone immediately suspected her. About the sign they made her wear. I held her close, my mind racing. This couldn't be right. My family was critical and judgmental, but they wouldn't do this to a child. To my child. "Julie, honey," I said gently, "are you sure this happened exactly the way you're telling me?" She pulled away from me then, her face crumpling. "You don't believe me either," she whispered. The betrayal in her eyes hit me like a physical blow. In that moment, I knew she was telling the truth. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Grandma says you work all the time because you don't want to be around a problem child like me." I froze. "What? When did Grandma say that?" Julie wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Lots of times. When you dropped me off there. And Aunt Paige says you wouldn't have to work so hard if you hadn't made bad choices. And Uncle Aaron told Blake and Madison that I don't listen because you never teach me consequences." The room seemed to tilt sideways as the realization hit me. This wasn't just about today. This was systematic. My family had been undermining me as a mother and poisoning my relationship with my daughter for months, maybe years. While I was working extra shifts to provide for us, they were telling my child I didn't want to be around her. I felt sick. And furious. But I kept my voice steady as I promised Julie that none of it was true, that I loved her more than anything in the world, that I worked hard for our future together, not to get away from her. That night, as Julie finally fell asleep in my bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, I made a decision. Whatever had happened in that house today, whatever had been happening all this time, it was going to stop. Now, the next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving Julie after what had happened, and I needed time to get the full story. We sat at our little kitchen table with hot chocolate, and I asked Julie to tell me everything about Christmas Day, from beginning to end. Aaron had picked her up at 8:30 as planned. When they arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. The adults were in the kitchen having coffee while the kids played in the family room. Julie said she played with her cousins for a while, but they weren't being very nice to her. Blake kept saying I was a baby because I still like stuffed animals, she said. And Jimmy and Lucas wouldn't let me play their game because they said girls are stupid. Around 10 o'clock, everyone gathered in the living room to open presents. Julie got new clothes from my parents, art supplies from Jeff and Carol, and books from Paige and Tom. She was coloring in a new sketchbook when Blake suddenly started yelling that he couldn't find his new gaming system. He got a Nintendo Switch, Julie explained. It was in a blue case. He was playing with it and then went to get food. And when he came back, he said it was gone. What happened next made my stomach turn. Blake immediately accused Julie of taking it, saying she had been jealous when he was playing with it earlier. My parents, siblings, and their spouses all turned to Julie and asked her what she had done with it. I told them I didn't take it, Mom. I promise I didn't. No one believed her. They searched her backpack, the coat closet, and even made her empty her pockets. When they didn't find the gaming system, My brother Aaron said she must have hidden it somewhere. They all started talking really loud, Julie said, her voice getting smaller. Grandpa said I was being disrespectful. Aunt Tiffany said I needed to learn not to take things that don't belong to me. Uncle Aaron said they should cancel Christmas dinner until I told the truth. Then my mother, my own mother, suggested they needed to teach Julie a lesson about honesty. She went to her craft room and came back with a piece of poster board and markers. In large black letters, she wrote "Family Disgrace." My father added "Lear" at the bottom. Grandma said I had to wear it so I would remember the importance of telling the truth, Julie said, tears filling her eyes again. They made strings and tied it around my wrists, so I couldn't take it off. I felt physically ill as Julie described being made to stand in the corner of the dining room while everyone else sat down to Christmas dinner. She could smell the turkey and mashed potatoes, hear the laughter and conversation, but no one spoke to her or acknowledged her presence. No one offered her food. "How long did they make you stand there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Julie shrugged. "A really long time. Until my legs hurt. Aunt Paige's watch beeped 4 times, and she always has it set for the hour. 4 hours. They made my 7-year-old daughter stand in a corner wearing a sign calling her a liar and a disgrace for 4 hours without food. And then what happened? Blake found his switch in his jacket pocket," Julie said. "He forgot he put it there. Grandma took the sign off me and said I could sit down, but dinner was over. She gave me a plate with cold food. I fought back tears, as Julie described eating alone at the table while the adults watched Christmas movies in the living room and the other children played with their gifts. No one apologized to her. No one comforted her. When it was time for dessert, my mother brought out her famous chocolate pie, but Julie wasn't offered any because, as my mother apparently said, dessert is for honest children. It took every ounce of self-control not to get in my car right then and drive to my parents' house. I wanted to scream at them, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain and humiliation they had put my child through. But Julie needed me more. "Is there anything else you want to tell me about yesterday?" I asked gently. Julie hesitated, then nodded. Madison was being nice to me. When everyone was watching the movie, she came and sat with me in the dining room for a little bit. She said she was sorry about what happened. Madison was Jeff's 16-year-old daughter, the quietest of all my nieces and nephews. I had always felt she was different from the rest of the family, less judgmental, more thoughtful. "That was kind of her," I said. "She took pictures," Julie said suddenly, "of me standing in the corner with the sign. She said it wasn't right what they were doing. She said you should see." My head snapped up. "Madison took pictures? Do you know where they are?" Julie nodded and went to her backpack. She pulled out her tablet, the one I had given her for her birthday last year. She opened the Photos app and handed it to me. My hands shook as I looked at the screen. There were 6 photos, clearly taken secretly from different angles. Julie standing in the corner of my parents' formal dining room, her small shoulders slumped, a large sign hanging from strings tied around her wrists. "Family Disgrace and Liar," visible in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. In one photo, you could see the Christmas dinner spread on the table, my family eating and laughing as if there wasn't a child being punished in the corner behind them. But the most damning photo was the last one. It showed Blake holding his Nintendo Switch, clearly having found it, while Julie still stood in the corner wearing the sign. The timestamp on the photo showed it was taken 2 hours after the one of Blake accusing Julie. They had known she was innocent, but they continued to punish her anyway. I set the tablet down carefully, afraid I might throw it across the room if I held it any longer. The evidence was irrefutable. My family had emotionally abused my child, humiliated her, denied her food, all to teach her a lesson about a crime she didn't commit. And even when they knew she was innocent, they continued the punishment. "Madison sent them to me on Christmas when everyone was leaving," Julie explained. "She said to show you." I pulled Julie into a tight hug, whispering promises that nothing like this would ever happen to her again. But inside, I was seething with a cold, calculated rage, unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Later that day, as Julie napped exhausted from the emotional toll, I examined the photos more closely. In the background of one, I could see my sister Paige actually taking a picture of Julie in the corner on her own phone, smiling as if it was amusing. In another, My father was pointing at Julie, while saying something to Jimmy and Lucas, clearly using her as some kind of object lesson for his grandsons. I forwarded the photos to my own phone, making sure they were safely backed up. Then I noticed something else on Julie's tablet. A text thread from Madison's number. "Julie, I'm so sorry about what happened today. It wasn't right. They shouldn't have done that to you. I tried to tell my parents it was wrong, but they wouldn't listen. I'm sending you these pictures so your mom can see. What they did wasn't okay. You didn't do anything wrong." There was more. Madison had been texting with Julie for weeks, checking in on her, sending her funny animal videos to cheer her up. Reading between the lines, I realized Madison had been witnessing mistreatment of Julie for some time and had been trying, in her teenage way, to provide some support. One text from 3 weeks ago made my blood run cold. "I heard Grandma and Aunt Paige talking about you yesterday. They said your mom needs to be taught a lesson about parenting. I don't know what they meant, but it didn't sound nice. Be careful at Christmas, okay?" This wasn't just a spontaneous overreaction to a missing toy. This was planned. My family had been building up to this, looking for an opportunity to teach us both a lesson. And they had found it on Christmas Day, when I wasn't there to protect my daughter. I sank down onto the couch, the full weight of what had happened hitting me. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about control. My parents had never accepted my choices, never respected me as an adult or as a mother. They had been undermining me for years, and now they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As Julie slept, I made a promise to myself and to her. This would never happen again. My family would never have the chance to hurt her again. And they would face consequences for what they had done. I just didn't know yet how severe those consequences would be. The next day, I took Julie to see her pediatrician, Dr. Amy Torres. I had been taking Julie to Dr. Torres since she was a baby, and I trusted her completely. I explained what had happened at Christmas and showed her the photos Madison had taken. Dr. Torres examined Julie carefully, paying special attention to her wrists, where the sign had been tied. The physical marks were minor and already fading, but Dr. Torres was more concerned about the emotional impact. "What your family did constitutes emotional abuse," she said plainly, after examining Julie. "The deliberate humiliation, the isolation, denying her food, it all adds up to a traumatic experience, especially for a child her age." She recommended a child psychologist who specialized in trauma and suggested we document everything in detail. "I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse," she added. "Would you like me to file the report, or would you prefer to go to the authorities yourself?" I hesitated. Filing an official report against my own parents and siblings felt extreme, but was it? They had abused my child. If it had been anyone else, would I hesitate to report them? "Can I think about it?" I asked. "I want to confront them first, understand why they did this." Dr. Torres nodded. "I can hold off on filing for 48 hours, but Dulce, be careful. Family dynamics can be complicated, and from what you're telling me, your parents have a history of manipulation." After leaving the doctor's office, I drove Julie to her favorite diner for lunch. As she ate her grilled cheese, I called my sister Paige. She was the youngest of my siblings, and the one I had once been closest to. "Hey, Dulce," she answered, sounding irritated. "I'm kind of busy right now. I need to talk to you about what happened on Christmas," I said, keeping my voice low so Julie couldn't hear. "About what you all did to Julie." There was a pause. "You mean the discipline?" Julie was being difficult, Dulce. She took Blake's Nintendo and wouldn't admit it. Blake found his Nintendo. Julie never had it. You all punished her for hours for something she didn't do. Another pause. "Well, we didn't know that at the time. And honestly, Dulce, Julie has been getting away with too much for too long. She needs structure and consequences, which you clearly don't provide." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You made a 7-year-old wear a sign calling her a disgrace. You left her standing in a corner without food for 4 hours. On Christmas Day." "Don't be so dramatic," Paige scoffed. "It wasn't 4 hours, and she was offered food eventually. Mom and Dad were just trying to help, since you're obviously struggling with parenting. Maybe if you weren't working all the time, Julie wouldn't need so much correction from the rest of us. The conversation continued in this vein, with Paige defending their actions and criticizing my parenting. It became clear that she, like our parents, believed they had done nothing wrong. In fact, they seemed to think they were helping. "Don't call us if you're just going to be ungrateful," Paige said finally. "We're only trying to give Julie the guidance she's not getting from you." I ended the call, feeling sick. If Paige couldn't see how wrong their actions had been, what hope did I have of getting through to my parents or other siblings? Over the next few days, Julie began showing signs of anxiety. She had nightmares about being trapped in corners and unable to move. She became clingy, not wanting me out of her sight. When I suggested taking her to the park to get some fresh air, she asked fearfully if my family would be there. I tried calling my brother Jeff, hoping that, as Madison's father, he might be more reasonable. The conversation went much the same as with Paige. Jeff insisted they had been justified in their actions, and suggested I should be grateful for their involvement in Julie's life. "Not everyone would put this much effort into helping their niece," he said, as if I should thank them for traumatizing my child. I was about to give up on reasoning with any of them when Madison texted me directly. "Aunt Dulce, is Julie okay? I've been really worried about her. What they did was so wrong." I called her immediately, grateful for the one family member who seemed to have a conscience. Madison confirmed everything Julie had told me and added more disturbing details. Apparently, the lesson for Julie had been planned in advance. She had overheard my parents discussing with Aaron and Paige how they needed to take charge of Julie's upbringing since I was clearly incapable. "They've been talking about it for weeks," Madison said, her voice quiet, as if afraid of being overheard. "Grandma even said they might need to consider more permanent arrangements if things didn't improve." "What do you mean, permanent arrangements?" I asked, my stomach nodding. I think they were talking about trying to get custody of Julie," Madison whispered. "They said you work too much, and Julie needs a stable home with proper discipline." I thanked Madison for her honesty, and asked her to keep in touch if she heard anything else. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. My parents were considering trying to take my child from me? It seemed insane, but given what they had already done, I couldn't dismiss the possibility. That night, after Julie was asleep, I searched through her tablet again, looking for any other communications from my family. What I found made my blood run cold. There was an entire text thread between my mother and Julie, dating back months. Messages asking Julie if she was eating properly, if she was often left alone, if she felt safe. Questions designed to elicit responses that could be used against me. "Grandma loves you and wants to make sure you're okay," one message read. "You can tell Grandma if you're ever scared or hungry when Mommy is working." Another. "Does Mommy's friend Steve ever stay overnight? How does that make you feel?" Steve was a nurse I had dated briefly 6 months ago. We had gone out for coffee a few times after shifts, and he had come over for dinner once, leaving well before Julie's bedtime. Nothing inappropriate had ever happened, but my mother was clearly fishing for information she could use to paint me as an unfit mother. But the most damning discovery came when I checked Julie's email. My mother had created an email account for her without my knowledge, and in the inbox was a message thread with the subject line, "Intervention Plan for Julie December." It was correspondence between my parents, Aaron, Tiffany, and Paige, about their concerns regarding my parenting and their plan to address it during the Christmas gathering. They discussed looking for an opportunity to demonstrate proper discipline and establish boundaries Julie clearly lacks. One email from my father read, "Christmas will be the perfect time. Dulce will be working, and we'll have the whole day to make progress with Julie. By the time Dulce picks her up, we should have established our authority." The emails made it clear that Christmas had been a premeditated attempt to undermine my parental authority and establish their control over Julie. It wasn't just about a missing Nintendo. They had been waiting for any excuse to implement their intervention. Further digging revealed something even more concerning. My mother had been in contact with Julie's school, presenting herself as acting on my behalf due to my demanding work schedule. She had met with Julie's teacher and the school counselor, expressing concerns about Julie's behavior and home life. An email from the school counselor to my mother read, "Thank you for bringing these concerns to our attention, Mrs. Wilson. While we haven't observed the behavioral issues you described in Julie, we appreciate your dedication to your granddaughter's well-being. If you continue to have concerns about her home environment, I can provide resources for family intervention services. My parents had been building a case against me, documenting fabricated concerns, manipulating Julie's words, and involving her school without my knowledge. This wasn't just family overstepping boundaries. This was calculated and dangerous. I sat at my kitchen table until the early hours of the morning, printing emails, saving text messages, backing up every piece of evidence I could find. My family had declared war on my ability to parent my own child, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The next day, I called Dr. Torres and told her I was ready to file that report. After filing the report with Child Protective Services, I decided it was time to confront my parents directly. I arranged for Julie to spend the afternoon with her best friend Emma and Emma's mother, Sarah, who was one of the few people I had told about the Christmas incident. "Take all the time you need," Sarah said when I dropped Julie off. "Emma has been dying for a playdate, and they can watch movies and make cookies. Julie will be fine here." I drove to my parents' house with a strange calm. The rage I had felt initially had hardened into something colder and more focused. I wasn't going there to scream or cry. I was going to look my parents in the eye and make them understand that they would never hurt Julie again. My mother answered the door with a tight smile. "Dulce, what a surprise. Your father and I were just having coffee." She led me to the kitchen where my father sat reading the newspaper. He barely looked up when I entered. "I need to talk to you both about what happened on Christmas," I said, sitting down across from them. My mother sighed dramatically. "If this is about the discipline issue with Julie, I think you're overreacting. Children need firm boundaries, Dulce. Something you've never understood. You made my 7-year-old daughter wear a sign calling her a family disgrace. You tied it to her wrists, so she couldn't remove it. You forced her to stand in a corner for 4 hours without food while you all enjoyed Christmas dinner." My father lowered his newspaper. "She took Blake's Nintendo and lied about it. Actions have consequences." Blake found his Nintendo. "It was in his pocket the whole time," I said, my voice steady. "And even after he found it, you continued to punish Julie." "I have proof." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos Madison had taken. My mother's face paled slightly, but my father's expression remained unmoved. "Madison should mind her own business," he said dismissively. "And you should be grateful that we care enough about Julie to correct her behavior. Lord knows she gets no discipline at home." I stared at him, unable to comprehend how he could possibly defend their actions. "What you did was child abuse. It was cruel, it was excessive, and it was wrong." My mother's eyes narrowed. "Abuse? Don't be ridiculous. We raised 4 children who all turned out just fine, except for you with your poor choices. Now you're raising Julie with no structure, no discipline, and no father figure. Someone needs to step in before it's too late." "Step in? It's not your place to step in. Julie is my daughter, not yours." "And what kind of mother are you?" my father asked sharply. "Working all hours, leaving her with whoever will take her. The girl needs stability." "I work to support us," I said, my control beginning to slip. "I'm a nurse, I help people, and I'm a good mother. Julie is happy, healthy, and loved." My mother reached across the table and patted my hand condescendingly. "Of course you think you're doing your best, dear, but parenting isn't about best efforts, it's about results. And frankly, Julie is showing signs of serious behavioral issues that need to be addressed." "What behavioral issues?" "Julie is a normal, well-adjusted 7-year-old. She's manipulative," my father said flatly. "She lies. She takes things that don't belong to her. She's disrespectful to adults. These are all symptoms of a lack of proper parenting." I pulled my hand away from my mother's. "None of that is true. You're making things up to justify your own controlling behavior." Just then, the doorbell rang. My mother went to answer it, and to my surprise, she returned with Aaron and Paige. They must have been called before I arrived, anticipating that I might confront our parents about Christmas. "We thought we should be here for this discussion," Aaron said, his tone professional and detached, as if this were a business meeting rather than a family crisis. Since we were all present on Christmas Day. Good, I said. Then you can all hear this at once. What you did to Julie was abusive and traumatizing. She's having nightmares. She's afraid to be around all of you. And it stops now. Paige rolled her eyes. Always so dramatic, Dulce. Julie was punished for bad behavior. Children need consequences. She didn't do anything wrong, I exploded. Blake found his Nintendo. And even if she had taken it, no child deserves to be humiliated like that. Ever. Aaron stepped forward, his expression serious. Dulce, we're all concerned about your parenting. You work too many hours. Julie lacks structure and discipline. We've all noticed increasingly problematic behavior. What behavior? I demanded. Give me one specific example of actual problematic behavior from Julie. The room fell silent. They couldn't name anything, because there was nothing to name. Julie was a normal, happy child, when she wasn't being emotionally tortured by her own family. Finally, my father spoke. This isn't just about Christmas. This is about a pattern we've all observed. Julie needs more stability than you're providing. She needs a proper family environment with consistent rules and expectations. She has that with me, I insisted. My mother shook her head sadly. Dulce, we've tried to help you see reason, but you're being stubborn. We think it's time to consider more formal arrangements for Julie's care. What are you talking about? Aaron cleared his throat. We've consulted with a family attorney. Given your work schedule and Julie's emerging behavioral issues, there's a strong case for your parents to seek partial custody. The room seemed to tilt. They couldn't be serious. You want to take my daughter from me? Not take her, my mother said soothingly. Share her. We could provide the stable home environment she needs while you're working. We have the space, the resources, and the experience. The experience of abusing children? I asked incredulously. Because that's what you did to Julie on Christmas. You abused her. My father stood up, his face reddening. That's enough, Dulce. We're trying to help you and Julie. Either you accept our help and our guidance in raising her properly, or we'll have no choice but to seek legal intervention. It was an ultimatum. Accept their control over my parenting or face a custody battle. I looked from face to face, searching for any sign of empathy or understanding. There was none. I think we're done here, I said, standing up. And let me be absolutely clear. Julie will never be left alone with any of you again. What you did was wrong, and there will be consequences. The only consequences will be for you, if you continue this foolishness, my father said coldly. Think very carefully about your next steps, Dulce. You can't win this fight. I walked out of their house feeling shaken but resolved. They were serious about trying to take Julie from me. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a threat to everything that mattered in my life. As I drove away, my phone pinged with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Laura Marshall, family attorney. Your parents consulted me about a potential grandparent visitation case. I declined to represent them and thought you should know they're shopping for legal representation. Call me if you need help. I pulled over and stared at the message. My parents had already been consulting attorneys. This wasn't a spontaneous threat made in the heat of argument. They had been planning this, perhaps for months. When I picked Julie up from her playdate, she was smiling for the first time in days. She and Emma had made chocolate chip cookies and watched their favorite movie. Seeing her happy face, I renewed my silent promise. No one would take her from me. No one would hurt her again. Whatever it took, I would protect my daughter. Back at home, as Julie was getting ready for bed, the mail slot clicked and an envelope fell to the floor. I opened it to find a formal legal notice from Wilson and Barnes, attorneys at law. My parents hadn't wasted any time. The letter stated that Harold and Maureen Wilson were seeking emergency temporary custody of Julie Wilson due to concerns about the child's well-being and safety in her current living situation. A hearing was scheduled for 10 days from now. The grounds cited for the emergency petition included abandonment due to excessive work hours, neglect of the child's emotional needs, and an unstable home environment. They were using my job as an ER nurse against me. twisting my hard work to support my daughter into evidence that I was an unfit mother. Attached to the notice was a statement allegedly from Julie's school counselor, expressing concerns about the child's emotional state and noting multiple discussions with the grandparents about the home situation. My mother's manipulative meetings at the school were now being used as evidence against me. I sank down onto the couch, the letter trembling in my hands. 10 days. I had 10 days to prepare to fight for my daughter. And if I lost, Julie could be placed temporarily with my parents. The same people who had made her wear a sign, calling her a family disgrace. The same people who had left her hungry and humiliated on Christmas Day. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. This was war. The next morning, I called the number Laura Marshall had texted me from. She agreed to meet me that afternoon at her office downtown. I arranged for Julie to stay with Sarah again, grateful for her friend's unwavering support during this crisis. Laura Marshall's office was small but elegant, with a wall of legal books and comfortable chairs. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "I'm glad you called, Dulce," she said after I'd explained the situation. "What your parents are attempting is aggressive and, frankly, concerning." "Can they really take Julie from me?" I asked, the fear I'd been suppressing bubbling to the surface. Laura sighed. "Grandparent custody cases are complex. Generally, courts prefer to keep children with their parents unless there's clear evidence of abuse or neglect. But your parents are clearly building a case. They're the ones who abused Julie. I have photos of what they did to her on Christmas." I showed her the pictures Madison had taken. Laura studied them carefully, her expression darkening. "This is emotional abuse, without question," she said. "The problem is, your parents have already filed for emergency temporary custody. If the judge grants it, Julie could be placed with them until a full hearing can determine permanent custody arrangements." My heart raced. How do we stop that from happening? "We need to file a counter-petition immediately, with these photos as evidence. We also need to document Julie's emotional state following the Christmas incident. Has she seen a therapist or counselor?" I told her about Dr. Torres and her recommendation for a child psychologist. "Julie has an appointment tomorrow with Dr. Samantha Green. Dr. Torres made some calls to get us in quickly." "Good. We'll need Dr. Green's professional assessment. In the meantime, I suggest you take a leave of absence from work if possible." "Why?" "I need my job. I need to support Julie." Laura looked at me sympathetically. "Your parents are using your work hours against you, Dulce. If you're working during the emergency hearing, it plays into their narrative that you're an absent mother." The injustice of it all made me want to scream. I was working to provide for my daughter, and they were using that dedication against me. But I understood the strategy. "I'll talk to my supervisor," I said. "See if I can take family medical leave." Laura nodded. "Now, let's discuss your support network. Who else knows about the Christmas incident and can vouch for your parenting?" I thought about it. Sarah, Julie's best friend's mother. We've been friends since the girls started kindergarten together. My coworkers at the hospital. Julie's teachers, though I'm worried my mother has been poisoning that well. We'll need statements from all of them. Character references attesting to your relationship with Julie and your capabilities as a mother. As Laura outlined our strategy for fighting the emergency custody petition, the enormity of what was happening hit me. I was going to have to prove in court that I deserved to keep my own child. That the very people who had raised me were not fit to have custody of Julie. "One more thing," Laura said as our meeting was ending. "Do you have any family members who might support your side? Anyone who witnessed the Christmas incident or who has seen concerning behavior from your parents in the past?" Madison's face flashed in my mind. "My niece, Madison. She's 16. She's the one who took the photos and sent them to Julie. And possibly my cousin Ryan. He's a social worker in Seattle now, but he grew up with us. He might have insights into my parents' parenting style." "Contact them both," Laura advised. Family testimony could be crucial, especially from someone who witnessed the Christmas incident firsthand. I left Laura's office with a long to-do list and a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had 10 days to prevent my abusive parents from gaining custody of my child. 10 days to build a case strong enough to convince a judge that I was the better parent, despite working full-time to support us. My first stop was the hospital. I explained the situation to my supervisor, nurse manager Janet Keller, who was shocked and immediately supportive. "Of course you can take family medical leave, Dulce," she said. "And I'll write a character reference myself. What your parents did to Julie is unconscionable." Janet also suggested that other nurses and doctors who had worked with me could provide statements about my character and work ethic. "Everyone here knows what a dedicated mother you are, how you pick up extra shifts to provide for Julie but never miss important events in her life. We'll make sure the court knows that too." Next, I went to Julie's school. I requested a meeting with her teacher, Miss Garcia, and the principal, Mr. Lawrence. I showed them the photos from Christmas and explained that my parents had been contacting the school without my knowledge. Miss Garcia was visibly upset by the photos. "Julie is a wonderful child, Dulce. She's creative, kind to other children, and always eager to learn. I've never observed any of the behavioral issues your mother mentioned." Mr. Lawrence checked the school records and confirmed that my mother had met with the school counselor 3 times in the past 2 months, presenting herself as acting on my behalf. "This is deeply concerning," he said. "Rest assured, we'll clarify the school's position regarding Julie. She's a well-adjusted student with no concerning behavioral issues. We can provide documentation to that effect for your attorney." When I picked Julie up from Sarah's house that afternoon, I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the chaos unfolding around us. Julie was still showing signs of anxiety, clinging to me more than usual and asking repeatedly if she had to see her grandparents again. "No, sweetheart," I assured her. "You don't have to see them if you don't want to." That night, after Julie was asleep, I contacted Madison. She responded immediately to my text. "I've been so worried about you and Julie," she wrote. "Mom and Dad are furious that I took those photos. They took my phone away, but I'm using my laptop to text you." I asked if she would be willing to make a statement about what she witnessed on Christmas Day. There was a long pause before her response. "I want to help, but my parents would kill me. Can I think about it? In the meantime, I have more photos and videos from Christmas. I'll send them tonight when everyone's asleep." True to her word, around midnight my phone pinged with multiple attachments from Madison. There were more photos of Julie standing in the corner with the sign, including one that clearly showed the time on the wall clock, but more damning was a video Madison had secretly recorded. In it, my mother could be heard saying, "This is what happens when children are raised without proper discipline. Julie needs to learn respect, and Dulce clearly isn't teaching her." My father added, "Maybe this will finally wake Dulce up to her failures as a mother." The video continued, showing Blake announcing he had found his Nintendo. Instead of immediately freeing Julie from her punishment, my mother said, "She can stay there a while longer." The lesson isn't just about the Nintendo, it's about her general attitude. I saved everything Madison sent, forwarding it all to Laura. This was undeniable evidence that the punishment had continued even after they knew Julie was innocent, and that it was motivated by their desire to control my parenting, not by any actual misbehavior from Julie. The next day, Julie had her appointment with Dr. Samantha Green, the child psychologist. I waited anxiously in the reception area while they talked. After their session, Dr. Green asked to speak with me privately. "Julie is showing clear signs of anxiety and emotional trauma," she said. "She describes feeling trapped and scared when thinking about her grandparents. She's having nightmares and showing hypervigilance, which are common responses to traumatic experiences." Dr. Green confirmed what I already knew. The Christmas incident had deeply affected Julie's sense of security and trust. "In my professional opinion," she added, "placing Julie in the custody of the people who caused this trauma would be harmful to her psychological well-being." I left with Dr. Green's promise to provide a formal assessment for the court and scheduled twice-weekly sessions for Julie to help her process the trauma. As the days passed, I gathered more evidence and support for our case. Sarah wrote a heartfelt letter describing my dedication as a mother and Julie's normally happy demeanor. Colleagues from the hospital provided character references. Julie's teacher and principal prepared statements contradicting my parents' claims about behavioral issues. I also reached out to my cousin Ryan, who now worked as a social worker specializing in child welfare cases in Seattle. He called me immediately after getting my message. I'm not surprised, he said grimly, when I described what had happened. Aunt Maureen and Uncle Harold were always controlling and punitive. Remember when they made Aaron stand in the driveway for hours because he got a B- on a math test? Ryan promised to fly in for the hearing and provide testimony about the patterns of emotional manipulation he had witnessed growing up in our extended family. What they did to Julie is consistent with how they've always operated, he said. Control through humiliation and isolation. 7 days before the hearing, Laura called with concerning news. My parents had submitted additional documentation to the court, including statements from neighbors claiming they had seen Julie outside unsupervised on multiple occasions. These are just normal times when Julie plays in our apartment complex playground, which is visible from our window, I explained, frustrated by the deliberate mischaracterization. I know, Laura said, but they're painting a picture of neglect. They've also submitted their own photos, showing Julie looking unkempt at family gatherings, and a calendar marking all the holidays and weekends you've worked in the past year. I'm a nurse, I said helplessly. Hospitals don't close on holidays. Someone has to work. I understand, Dulce. And we'll make that clear to the judge. But be prepared for a difficult hearing. Your parents are well respected in the community. They have financial resources, and they're presenting themselves as concerned grandparents only interested in Julie's well-being. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table feeling overwhelmed. My parents were wealthy, connected, and apparently willing to lie to get what they wanted. How could I possibly fight them and win? Then my phone pinged with a text from Madison. Aunt Dulce, I've decided to help. I'll testify about Christmas, and I have something else you should know. Madison's something else turned out to be a bombshell. She had overheard a conversation between my parents and her father, Jeff, in which my mother admitted that the real motivation behind the custody case was to teach Dulce her place. Grandma said it wasn't really about Julie, Madison texted. She said it was about you refusing to follow their guidance and thinking you knew better than everyone else. She said once you learned your lesson, they might consider a more flexible arrangement. This revelation confirmed what I had suspected all along. The custody case wasn't about Julie's well-being. It was about controlling me, punishing me, for daring to parent my child according to my own values rather than theirs. With this information, Laura adjusted our strategy. We need to expose their true motivation, she said during our next meeting. If we can demonstrate to the judge that this is about control, rather than genuine concern for Julie, it strengthens our case significantly. The problem was proving it. Madison's testimony would help, but my parents would likely dismiss it as teenage rebellion or manipulation on my part. We needed more. What about recordings? I asked. If I could get them to admit their real motivation on tape? Laura shook her head. Recording conversations without consent is illegal in this state. We can't use that in court. But, she added, we can use any written communication where they reveal their true intentions. I went through all the emails and texts I had saved over the years, looking for evidence of my parents' controlling behavior and criticism of my parenting. I found numerous messages where they undermined my decisions, criticized my choices, and suggested they knew better how to raise Julie. But nothing that explicitly stated their custody case was about controlling me rather than helping Julie. 5 days before the hearing, Madison texted again. Mom and Dad have been arguing about the custody case. Dad thinks Grandma and Grandpa are going too far. He said what they did to Julie on Christmas was excessive, and he doesn't want to be part of it anymore. This was the first indication of a potential crack in the family united front against me. If Jeff was having doubts, maybe others were too. I asked Madison if she thought her father might be willing to talk to me. Maybe, she replied. He's really upset about everything. I heard him tell Mom that he's not comfortable with how Grandma and Grandpa are handling this. I decided to take a risk and reach out to Jeff directly. I sent him a text asking if we could talk, just the two of us, about Julie's well-being. To my surprise, he agreed to meet me at a coffee shop the next day. Jeff looked uncomfortable when I arrived, fidgeting with his coffee cup and avoiding my gaze. I got straight to the point. Jeff, you know what happened to Julie on Christmas was wrong. Madison showed me the photos and videos. No child deserves to be treated that way. He sighed heavily. Look, Dulce, I think things got out of hand. But Mom and Dad were just trying to help. They worry about Julie. Do they? Or are they trying to control how I parent because they don't approve of my choices? Jeff didn't answer immediately, which told me everything I needed to know. The custody case isn't about Julie's well-being, is it? I pressed. It's about punishing me for not parenting the way they think I should. Mom can be controlling, Jeff admitted reluctantly. And she's never really accepted your decisions. The single motherhood, your career choice. But they do love Julie. Love isn't enough, Jeff. They emotionally abused her. They humiliated her. They're trying to take her away from me, her mother, because I won't submit to their control. How is that loving? Jeff looked troubled. Madison showed us the photos. Carol was horrified. We've been arguing with Mom and Dad about it. Carol thinks they crossed a line. And honestly, so do I. But they're our parents, Dulce. It's complicated. It's not complicated when it comes to protecting children from abuse, I said firmly. What would you do if someone treated Madison the way they treated Julie? That question hit home. Jeff's expression shifted from conflicted to resolute. I'd do whatever it took to protect her. That's all I'm doing, I said softly. Protecting my daughter. Just like you would protect yours. By the end of our conversation, Jeff had agreed to at least remain neutral in the custody case. He couldn't bring himself to actively testify against our parents, but he and Carol would not support the petition either. It was a small victory, but a significant one. The family united front was beginning to crumble. 3 days before the hearing, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Carol, Jeff's wife. Dulce, I'm sorry for what happened to Julie, she said without preamble. What your parents did was wrong, and this custody case is wrong too. I was surprised by her directness. Carol and I had never been particularly close. Madison showed us everything, she continued. The photos, the videos, the texts. We didn't know the full story until then. Your parents told us Julie had a minor timeout for taking Blake's game. They never mentioned the sign or keeping her in the corner for hours without food. Carol's voice broke slightly. If someone did that to Madison or Blake, I'd be furious. No child deserves that kind of treatment. She went on to explain that she and Jeff had decided not to support my parents' custody petition. More importantly, they were withdrawing the statement they had previously provided about witnessing concerning behavior from Julie. We're going to tell the truth, Carol said firmly. Julie is a good kid, and you're a good mother. Working hard to support your child doesn't make you neglectful. It makes you dedicated. This unexpected support from Jeff and Carol gave me new hope. But the real breakthrough came the next day when Madison called me directly from her friend's phone. Aunt Dulce, I need to tell you something important. I recorded Grandma talking about the custody case. My heart raced. Madison, recording without consent is illegal in this state. We can't use that in court. I know, she said. But I wasn't thinking about court. I just wanted evidence for Dad and Mom. Grandma was talking to Aunt Paige in the kitchen yesterday, and I left my phone recording on the counter when I went to get the mail. She said something about the custody case being necessary to bring Dulce back into line, and how, once she accepts guidance, we can be more flexible about visitation. While we couldn't use the recording in court, the fact that Madison had captured my mother admitting the true motivation behind the custody case was significant. It had apparently been the final push Jeff and Carol needed to withdraw their support entirely. Dad and Mom are coming to court, Madison said. They want to tell the judge what really happened on Christmas, and that they don't support Grandma and Grandpa's custody petition. The day before the hearing, Laura and I met to finalize our strategy. We had assembled a strong case, the photos and videos from Christmas, testimony from Madison about what she witnessed, statements from Julie's teachers, and the school principal refuting claims of behavioral issues. Dr. Green's professional assessment of Julie's trauma, character references from my colleagues and friends, and now the withdrawal of support from Jeff and Carol. Your parents are losing ground, Laura said confidently. Their petition was based on painting you as neglectful and Julie as troubled. We have substantial evidence contradicting both claims. But my parents weren't giving up. That evening, I received an email from their attorney outlining a settlement offer. They would withdraw the custody petition if I agreed to supervised visitation 3 weekends a month and allowed them to make educational and medical decisions for Julie in consultation with me. "They're still trying to control your parenting," Laura observed when I forwarded her the email. "And 3 weekends a month would severely limit your time with Julie. I recommend we reject this offer and proceed to the hearing." I agreed. The settlement wasn't about compromise. It was about establishing their authority over Julie's upbringing. I wouldn't agree to give them any power over my daughter after what they had done. That night, as I tucked Julie into bed, she asked about the hearing tomorrow. I had explained to her in simple terms that we needed to talk to a judge about where she would live, but I had tried to shield her from the full stress of the situation. "Will I have to go live with Grandma and Grandpa?" she asked, her small voice trembling. I held her close. "No, sweetheart. I promise you won't have to live with them. The judge is going to listen to everyone, and then he'll decide what's best for you. And what's best for you is to stay right here with me." "But what if the judge decides wrong?" I kissed her forehead. "Then we'll keep fighting. I will never stop fighting for you, Julie. Ever." As she drifted off to sleep, I sat beside her bed, watching her peaceful face and remembering the day she was born. How tiny she had been. How perfect. I had promised then to protect her with every fiber of my being. Tomorrow, I would fulfill that promise in a courtroom, facing down my own parents to keep my daughter safe. Whatever happened, there was no going back. The family I had grown up with, the parents I had both feared and sought approval from, the siblings I had played with and fought with, would never be the same after tomorrow. But as I watched Julie sleeping, I knew with absolute certainty that I was doing the right thing. Family should never hurt the ones they claim to love. And if they do, real love means standing up to them, no matter the cost. The morning of the hearing dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions inside me. I dressed carefully in a conservative navy blue dress, wanting to project the image of a responsible, stable mother. Julie would be staying with Sarah during the hearing, spared the stress of the courthouse. When I arrived at the county courthouse, Laura was waiting for me on the steps. She looked confident and prepared, her briefcase bulging with our evidence. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, taking a deep breath. "Let's go." Inside, the family court was smaller and less formal than I had imagined, more like a conference room than the dramatic courtroom seen on television. Judge Patricia Mercer sat at a desk at the front, with tables for each party facing her. My parents were already seated with their attorney, a stern-looking man in an expensive suit. My mother wore a pearl necklace and a cream-colored blouse that made her look every inch the respectable grandmother. My father sat rigidly beside her, his face impassive. To my surprise, Jeff and Carol were sitting on our side of the room, along with Madison. They nodded to me as I entered. Ryan, my cousin, had flown in from Seattle the night before and sat with them. Paige and her husband Tom sat behind my parents, as did Aaron and Tiffany. The family had clearly divided into camps. Judge Mercer called the court to order and explained that this was a hearing on an emergency petition for temporary custody filed by Harold and Maureen Wilson. She would hear evidence from both sides before making her determination. My parents' attorney went first, painting a picture of concerned grandparents worried about their granddaughter's well-being. He described my work schedule as abandonment and suggested Julie was showing signs of emotional distress due to my absence. "Mrs. Wilson has observed concerning behaviors during Julie's visits," he said smoothly. "Lying, taking items that don't belong to her, emotional outbursts. All signs of a child crying out for stability and structure." He presented the calendar marking my work hours, statements from neighbors about Julie playing unsupervised, and carefully edited photos showing Julie looking tired or upset at family gatherings. Everything was twisted to support their narrative of neglect and inadequate parenting. When it was Laura's turn, she started by directly addressing the Christmas incident. She submitted the photos and videos Madison had taken, showing them on a laptop so the judge could see clearly what had been done to Julie. Judge Mercer's expression darkened as she viewed the evidence. "The child was made to wear a sign calling her a family disgrace and liar," she asked, looking directly at my parents. It was a teaching moment, Your Honor, my mother replied, her voice steady. Children need to learn consequences for their actions. Laura then called Madison to testify. At 16, she was poised and articulate as she described what she had witnessed on Christmas Day. Julie never took Blake's Nintendo, Madison said firmly. Blake found it in his jacket pocket hours before they let Julie out of the corner. But they kept punishing her anyway. And why did you take these photos and videos? Laura asked. Madison glanced at her parents, then at my mother and father. Because I knew it was wrong, she said simply. No one would stand up for Julie, so I documented it to show Aunt Dulce what they did to her daughter. Next, Laura called Jeff to testify. He looked uncomfortable but determined as he took the stand. I initially supported my parents' petition, he admitted. But after seeing the full evidence of what happened on Christmas and learning about their true motivations, I can no longer do so. What do you mean by true motivations? Laura asked. Jeff hesitated, then said, This custody petition isn't really about Julie's well-being. It's about controlling my sister's parenting choices. My parents disapprove of how Dulce is raising Julie and want to force her to parent according to their standards. My mother's face tightened with anger as Jeff spoke. I could see her whispering furiously to her attorney. Dr. Green testified next, describing Julie's anxiety and emotional trauma following the Christmas incident. In my professional opinion, she concluded, placing this child in the custody of the individuals who caused this trauma would be psychologically harmful to her. Julie's teacher, Miss Garcia, and the school principal, Mr. Lawrence, both testified that Julie showed no signs of the behavioral issues my parents had alleged. She's a well-adjusted, creative child who gets along well with her peers, Miss Garcia said. I've never observed any concerning behaviors that would suggest neglect or inadequate parenting. Throughout all the testimony, my parents sat stone-faced, occasionally whispering to their attorney. I could see their narrative crumbling as witness after witness contradicted their claims. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke from the heart about my love for Julie and my commitment to providing her with a stable, loving home. I work as a nurse to support us, I said. It's not always an easy schedule, but it allows me to provide for Julie's needs. I arrange reliable childcare when I'm working, help with her homework, attend school events, and make sure she has everything she needs, not just materially, but emotionally as well. I described finding Julie trembling and traumatized after Christmas, showing the judge the photos of the marks on her wrists where the sign had been tied. No child should ever be humiliated and isolated as a form of discipline, I said firmly. What my parents did wasn't discipline. It was emotional abuse. And their attempt to gain custody isn't about Julie's well-being. It's about punishing me for not parenting exactly as they demand. My parents' attorney cross-examined me aggressively, suggesting that my work hours meant Julie was effectively being raised by babysitters and family members. If you truly prioritized your daughter, wouldn't you find employment with more regular hours? He asked. I prioritize my daughter by working hard to provide for her, I replied steadily. Being a nurse isn't just a job, it's a calling. I help people when they're vulnerable and in pain. That's a value I want to teach Julie, along with compassion, respect, and dignity, qualities that were completely absent in how my parents treated her on Christmas Day. Finally, my parents testified. My mother spoke about her concerns for Julie's development and well-being, carefully avoiding directly addressing the Christmas incident unless specifically asked. My father emphasized the structure and resources they could provide that I, as a single mother with a demanding job, supposedly could not. When Laura cross-examined them, she was relentless. Mrs. Wilson, do you believe it's appropriate to make a 7-year-old child wear a sign calling her a family disgrace as punishment? My mother's composure slipped slightly. It was a teaching moment that perhaps went too far, she admitted. And Mr. Wilson, even after Blake found his Nintendo, confirming that Julie had not taken it, you continued to punish her for hours. Why? My father cleared his throat. The punishment wasn't just about the Nintendo. It was about her general attitude and behavior. What specific behavior justified hours of isolation and humiliation on Christmas Day? Laura pressed. She has been increasingly disrespectful, my father said vaguely. This was an opportunity to establish proper boundaries. Laura showed the video where my mother could be heard saying the punishment was about teaching me a lesson about my failures as a mother. Isn't it true, Mrs. Wilson, that this was really about controlling your daughter's parenting, not about Julie's behavior at all? My mother's face flushed with anger. We have raised 4 successful children. We know what works. Dulce refuses to accept guidance or discipline Julie properly. Someone needs to step in before it's too late. Step in by emotionally abusing a 7-year-old child? Laura asked quietly. The courtroom fell silent. In that moment, my mother's mask slipped completely. You have no idea what we've dealt with, she said, her voice rising. Dulce has always been difficult. Always thought she knew better than everyone else. Julie is following the same path because Dulce won't listen to reason. We were trying to help, Judge Mercer interrupted. Mrs. Wilson, are you suggesting that the punishment described here was partially motivated by frustration with your adult daughter's parenting choices rather than your granddaughter's behavior? My mother realized too late what she had revealed. I'm simply saying that children need structure and discipline, which Julie isn't receiving at home. But the damage was done. The true motivation behind both the Christmas incident and the custody petition had been exposed, straight from my mother's own mouth. After all testimony concluded, Judge Mercer called a brief recess to review the evidence. When she returned, her expression was grave. I've been a family court judge for 15 years, she began. In that time, I've seen many contentious custody disputes. But rarely have I seen such clear evidence of emotional abuse as what was inflicted on Julie Wilson on Christmas Day. She looked directly at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, the treatment you subjected your granddaughter to was cruel, excessive, and completely inappropriate. No child should ever be humiliated in such a manner, especially by family members who should be providing love and support. Turning to me, her expression softened slightly. Miss Wilson, the court finds no evidence of neglect or inadequate parenting on your part. Working to support your child is not abandonment. It is responsible parenthood. Judge Mercer's ruling was decisive. Not only was the emergency petition for temporary custody denied, but she issued a temporary restraining order preventing my parents from having any unsupervised contact with Julie. Given the documented emotional abuse and the clear evidence that this custody petition was motivated by control rather than genuine concern for the child's well-being, this court finds that Julie Wilson's best interests are served by remaining in the full custody of her mother, with no court-mandated visitation with the maternal grandparents at this time. She further ordered that my parents complete parenting classes and anger management counseling before the court would consider any future visitation requests. As we left the courtroom, my mother called out to me, "Dulce, this isn't over. You can't keep Julie from us forever." I turned to face her, feeling strangely calm. "You're right, Mom. It isn't over. It's just beginning. Beginning with me protecting my daughter from anyone who would hurt her, even if that's her own grandparents." I walked away then, not looking back. Outside the courthouse, Jeff, Carol, Madison, and Ryan were waiting for me. "Thank you," I said, embracing each of them. "Your support meant everything." Madison hugged me tightly. "I just did what was right. Julie deserved someone to stand up for her." "We're sorry we didn't see what was happening sooner," Jeff said. "Carol and I have been talking. We'd like to stay in touch, have playdates with Blake and Madison." "If you're comfortable with that, I'd like that," I said sincerely. Julie loved her cousins, and I didn't want her to lose those relationships because of what had happened. Ryan squeezed my shoulder. "You did good, Dulce. You protected your daughter, even when it meant standing up to your own parents. That takes real courage." 2 days later, my phone started blowing up with calls and texts. Word had spread about the courthouse drama and the details of what had happened on Christmas Day. My parents' friends from church were calling to express shock and dismay. Extended family members were taking sides. Paige called in tears, saying she regretted supporting our parents and asking if we could talk. I let most of the calls go to voicemail. This wasn't about family drama or choosing sides. It was about one simple truth that seemed to have eluded my parents and some of my siblings. Children deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, not humiliated and controlled. In the weeks that followed, Julie began to heal with the help of Dr. Green's therapy sessions. The nightmares became less frequent. She started playing outside again, without constantly looking over her shoulder. We established new traditions and routines that were just ours, free from my parents' criticism and control. Jeff and Carol kept their word about staying in touch. Madison became a regular visitor to our apartment, often babysitting Julie when I had to work. Ryan called weekly from Seattle, offering support and guidance. Even Paige eventually came around, admitting that she had been wrong to support our parents and asking for a chance to rebuild our relationship. But my parents remained unrepentant. They refused to attend the court-ordered parenting classes, insisting they had done nothing wrong. They sent formal letters through their attorney demanding visitation, which the court continued to deny based on their non-compliance with the judge's orders. 6 months after the hearing, we celebrated Julie's 8th birthday with a small party at our apartment. Jeff, Carol, Madison, Blake, and Paige were there. Ryan flew in from Seattle. Julie's friends from school filled our small living room with laughter and noise. There was cake and ice cream and presents, but most importantly, there was love and respect. As I watched Julie blow out her candles, her face glowing with happiness, I knew we had made it through the darkest time. We had emerged stronger, surrounded by people who truly cared about us, who understood that love doesn't control or humiliate or demand obedience. The following Christmas was quiet and perfect. Just Julie and me in our apartment with a small tree and simple gifts. No family drama, no criticism, no expectations. Just love. My parents still call sometimes, usually when they've heard I'm working extra shifts or when one of their friends has seen Julie playing in the apartment complex playground. They frame it as concern, but I recognize the control tactics now. I let the calls go to voicemail and live our lives on our terms. Some people don't understand why I don't simply forgive and move on, why I won't allow my parents back into our lives. They talk about family being everything, about children needing grandparents, about letting go of the past, but those people didn't see the sign tied to my daughter's wrists. They didn't hold her as she cried from nightmares. They don't understand that some lines, once crossed, change everything forever. I learned something profound through all of this. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your child is to stand between them and the people who would hurt them, even when those people are family. Sometimes, protecting your child means saying no to the very people who raised you. It isn't easy, it isn't comfortable, but it is necessary. Julie is thriving now, free from the weight of cruel judgments and impossible expectations. She is kind and creative and occasionally messy and forgetful, as children should be. She knows she is loved unconditionally, not for what she does or how she behaves, but simply for who she is. And that is the greatest gift I could ever give her. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and protecting someone you love? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to always stand up for what's right, no matter how difficult it might be.